All right, welcome back to our Q&A. In this episode, we're going to ask, how did Job know about Orion and Pleiades? And so, first, let's talk about, when did science discover gravity? The understanding that celestial bodies are held together by gravity has evolved over the centuries, and the concept of gravity as the force that's governing the motion of planets and stars was first formulated by Sir Isaac Newton in the late 17th century. His law of universal gravitation, which was published in 1687, posited that every mass attracts every other mass with a force that is proportional to their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So, applying Newton's law, astronomers recognize that star clusters like the Pleiades are gravitationally bound systems. The Pleiades, also known as the Seven Sisters, is an open star cluster containing young, hot B-type stars. Modern observations have revealed that the cluster contains over 1,000 stars, not including the unresolved spectroscopic binary stars. Up to 14 stars in the cluster are visible to the unaided eye in good viewing conditions. In contrast to this, the stars comprising Orion's belt are not gravitationally bound to each other. They're part of the Orion constellation, but they're located at varying distances from Earth, approximately 800, 1300, and 900 light years. And so their alignment from our vantage point is a line of sight effect rather than the result of gravitational binding. So in summary, the realization that the star clusters like the Pleiades are held together by gravity emerged as a direct application of Newton's law of universal gravitation in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. This foundational understanding has been refined with advancements in observational astronomy and astrophysics over the ensuing centuries. What does the book of Job have to say about it? Well, the book of Job references the Pleiades and Orion in Job 38, verse 31, when God challenges Job with a big science quiz with questions about the natural world to demonstrate God's power and wisdom. He asked him in Job 38, verse 31, he says, "Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loosen the cords of the Orion?" This verse will highlight God's sovereignty over the heavens, and it will imply that he alone has this power to control celestial objects. The chains of the Pleiades suggest that these stars appear tightly bound together in its original text, which aligns with modern astronomy's understanding that the Pleiades is a gravitationally bound open star cluster. The cords of Orion might refer to the stars in Orion's belt, which, while visually aligned from Earth's perspective, they are not gravitationally bound and they are different distances from us. So this poetic passage reflects the ancient understanding of the heavens, marveling at their complexity and order. And while Job couldn't have understood the gravitational principles behind these formations, because those ancient cultures didn't recognize this, the text will poetically convey truth that will align with our modern scientific observations, which is going to emphasize God's control over creation. So when was this book of Job written, right? Sir Isaac Newton made this in the 16th, 17th century. When was the book of Job written? The book of Job is believed to be one of the oldest books in the Bible. Scholars generally are going to put this in the patriarchal period around 2000 to 1500 BC. Although its exact date is uncertain. That estimation is based on cultural and historical context. Job's lifestyle is going to resemble that of the patriarchs like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, including the wealth that is measured in livestock and the absence of references to the Mosaic Law. 2. Language. The Hebrew that's used in the book of Job has many archaic elements to it, which will suggest an ancient origin. And 3, theological themes. Job focuses on timeless questions about suffering, righteousness, and God's sovereignty without referencing Israel's covenant or their temple worship or the law of Moses, and it's going to point to a time before these were central in Israelite culture. Thus, the book of Job is often considered to have been written around 2000 to 1500 BC, possibly making it older than many of the other books in the Bible. So its insights into creation and the cosmos are going to be remarkable. And this is one of many, given the limited scientific understanding at that time, and many are going to see it as evidence of divine inspiration. So how did Job know about Orion and Pleiades? The mention of celestial objects like Orion and Pleiades in the book of Job is going to reflect an understanding of the natural world that aligns with God's revelation to humanity. And here's some possibilities for how Job might have known about these constellations. Right? One, oral tradition and ancient observation. Ancient peoples were obvious, keen observers of the night sky. The constellations, including Orion and Pleiades, have been recognized and named across many cultures for millennia. The Pleiades, in particular, are among the most prominent and easily recognizable star clusters that's visible to the naked eye, and Orion's belt is similarly striking. Job, living in the patriarchal era, would have likely have been familiar with these celestial objects as part of the shared knowledge that's passed down through the generations. Two, he could have got it through divine revelation. Many people will believe that the details in the book of Job, especially chapters 1 and 2, reflect direct inspiration or revelation from God. Job's dialogue, particularly in chapters like chapter 38, is going to showcase God's rhetorical questions about creation, things that Job was never going to be able to answer, including references to the stars, and it's going to emphasize his sovereign control over the universe and its discoveries. And so this knowledge could have been revealed to Job directly or preserved through earlier divine revelation. And then there's cultural knowledge of the stars. Ancient cultures often incorporated the constellations into their mythology, agriculture, and navigation. References to the Pleiades and Orion are found in other ancient texts and cultures, suggesting that knowledge of these constellations was widespread. Job's recognition of these names could have been part of his cultural and environmental context. Ultimately, Job's knowledge of Orion and Pleiades is going to serve as a testament to overall humanity's long-standing awareness of the heavens, and it will point to God's power and authority as creator, who not only formed these celestial bodies, but also controls their movements and holds the universe together. But did the ancient cultures at that time that Job was written, did they recognize that these constellations were held together by gravity? No. Ancient cultures did not recognize that the celestial objects like the Pleiades were held together by gravity. The understanding of gravity as a universal force came much later, with Sir Isaac Newton with his formulation of the law of universal gravitation in 1687. However, there were some ancient peoples that observed patterns and groupings in the night sky, and they associated these myths, agricultural calendars, and navigation. The Pleiades was known as the Seven Sisters by the Greeks. Their grouping was understood visually based on what could be observed with the naked eye, but they didn't have a concept of the physical forces binding them together. Similarly, Orion's belt and the other stars in the constellation were grouped together visually. Ancient cultures often viewed these patterns as constellations, and they linked them to some other deity or god or story, but they didn't understand the true spatial relationships or the forces that were involved. And then you have Job's reference. The mention of Pleiades and Orion in the book of Job reflects a very profound awareness of the heavens, but it's framed poetically and theologically, not scientifically. Job 38 verse 31 will ask the question, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loosen the cords of the Orion? This language acknowledges that these groupings appear connected, but attributes their ordering and maintenance to God's sovereignty. Of course we cannot bind the chains or loosen those cords. God is what controls those forces of nature. He established them. So in summary, the ancient cultures, including during the time of Job, they observed celestial groupings like the Pleiades and the Orion, but they understood them in terms of patterns and appearances, not physical forces. The realization that celestial objects are held together by gravity and the broader understanding of gravitational forces, that came thousands of years later with the development of modern science. So how would Job get this information? Job 38 verse 31 will suggest this understanding of the Pleiades as bound together and the Orion as loosened. This poetic phrasing, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loosen the cords of the Orion, is going to imply that these star formations have distinct characteristics. For example, the Pleiades is bound. Modern science affirms that the stars of the Pleiades are indeed a gravitationally bound open star cluster. They are physically related and move together through space. And while Job couldn't have understood gravity in the scientific sense, The text itself recognizes the unique binding nature of this cluster. And I'm letting you see the supernatural quality of the text itself. And Orion as loosening. In contrast, the stars of Orion's belt are not gravitationally bound. They only appear to be aligned from Earth's perspective, but are at vastly different distances from us. But he would have not have known that. The phrase loosen the cords will poetically align with modern astronomy's understanding that these stars are not physically connected. So how could Job have known this? Well, divine revelation. The most plausible explanation from a biblical perspective, speaking as a Christian, is that God obviously revealed this knowledge to Job. Job 38 is part of God's speech, and it's highlighting his power and wisdom in creation, so obviously it has supernatural qualities to it. The understanding of the Pleiades as bound and the Orion as loosened was going to reflect God's sharing truths about the cosmos that Job and humanity couldn't have known naturally at that time. Nobody would have known that naturally. And so the observation and inspiration, while ancient peoples observed the heavens closely, they wouldn't have had the scientific tools to discern physical connections between the stars at 2000 to 1500 BC. So if Job was inspired by God to write this passage, his poetic language may reflect truths revealed by the Creator about his control over the stars, even if Job didn't fully grasp the science behind it. And so you also have prophetic insight. The Bible often presents knowledge that aligns with scientific discoveries made much later. For example, Isaiah 40 verse 22 refers to the earth as a circle, and Psalm 8 verse 8 will mention paths of the sea, both of which align with modern understanding. Actually, our U.S. Naval Academy is named after Matthew Maury, who, based on that Psalm 8:8, went out and charted the seas on that psalm, again, thousands of years later. And our U.S. Naval Academy is named after him. So the significance of that is that Job's acknowledgement of the unique binding of the Pleiades and loosening of the Orion underscores the Bible's consistent message that God is the sovereign creator and sustainer of the universe. It also serves as a humbling reminder of humanity's very limited understanding compared to God's infinite wisdom, which is going to transcend time and scientific progress. So yes, the most logical explanation for Job's knowledge about Pleiades being bound and Orion being loosened is divine revelation from God. At the time that Job is written, ancient people had no scientific means to understand the physical relationships between the stars. And so the concept of gravitational forces binding celestial objects was not discovered until thousands of years later. Here's why God is the most reasonable explanation. It has scientific precision beyond human understanding. The Bible statement about the chains of the Pleiades aligns perfectly with modern astronomy, which confirms that the Pleiades is a gravitationally bound star cluster. Similarly, the loosening of the Orion reflects the reality that Orion's belt is not gravitationally bound, even though it looks like it, and its stars are moving apart over time. And so this kind of precise knowledge would have been impossible for humans in Job's time to deduce through observation alone. And then you have God's sovereignty over creation. Job 38 is God's response to Job, and it will emphasize God's omniscience and omnipotence, and it's going to point to the stars and their unique characteristics. God underscores that He alone has the power and understanding to create, order, and sustain the universe. And so this passage serves to humble Job and us, reminding him and us of the Creator's infinite wisdom and control over all things. Proverbs 25 verse 2 says, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it's the glory of kings to search out a matter. Right? And that is really our glory, is searching out these scientific discoveries, is discovering God Himself. And so the consistency of divine revelation, the Bible consistently presents truths that were far beyond the knowledge of the time. For example, Job 26 verse 7 says He hangs the earth on nothing, which aligns with the modern understanding that the earth is suspended in space before modern science recognized that. Similarly, the insights about the Pleiades and the Orion further demonstrate God's revelation of the truths that humans couldn't comprehend until much later. So in summary, Job's knowledge about the Pleiades and Orion being gravitationally bound or loosened will point directly to God as the source of this understanding. This is going to align with the broader purpose of Job chapter 38, which is to display God's unmatched authority, wisdom, and sovereignty over all creation. So if the book of Job was written about 2000 to 1500 BC, and Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity in 1687 AD, the time gap would be approximately 3,687 to 3,187 years after Job was written. This vast period is going to highlight the remarkable nature of the insights in Job chapter 38, verse 31, about the chains of the Pleiades and the cords of the Orion, which are going to align with modern scientific discoveries made thousands of years later. And so it doesn't stop there. This is one of many. The Bible contains an estimated of 2,500 prophecies, with about 2,000 of them already fulfilled with complete 100% accuracy. No other book in the world does this. These prophecies span a wide range of topics, including the Messianic prophecies. Over 300 prophecies specifically point to the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, his birth in Bethlehem, Micah 5:2, his crucifixion, Psalm 22, and his resurrection, Psalm 16:10, as some references. Another topic is prophecies about the nations. There's predictions about the rise and fall of empires, ridiculously accurate, such as the Babylonian, Persian, Greek, and Roman empires. This is in Daniel's chapters 2 and 7. Prophecies about Israel's history. Detailed prophecies about Israel, including its own destruction, dispersion, and eventual restoration as a nation in Ezekiel 37 and Isaiah 11. And then you have the end times prophecies and predictions about the future, including the return of Christ, the final judgment, and the establishment of God's eternal kingdom in Revelation and Matthew 24. And Revelation is amazing because in that book there's over 800 connections to the Old Testament, and searching that out is absolutely breathtaking. So the fact that many of these prophecies have been fulfilled with remarkable down-to-the-day precision is often against all odds. It is a compelling argument for the divine inspiration of the Bible. The remaining prophecies are going to focus on future events and are yet to be fulfilled. And so this unique track record of accuracy that the Bible has sets the Bible apart from every other religious and historical text. You can find more study material at TaylorBibleStudy.com.